All right. So in here, we had a whole list of things that are up there. Probably hard to see on the wall, but I'll go over them. So being kind as a leader, being open to suggestions, open to feedback, open to criticism, having a sense of good morals, having humility and empathy. So being able to say, I'm sorry, I'm wrong, I did something wrong, and then being empathetic to others, putting yourself in their shoes, putting yourself in their position, being able to delegate and a willingness to delegate, but also a willingness to do what you delegate to others. So it's not you're only doing what only you can do, but at the same time, if you had to do something that was somebody else was asked to do, you'd be willing to do it. And having all that together. So that's what we had here in the room in the last 5 minutes. For those that are online, what did you come up with?
I just said that somebody who's respectful.
Respectful? So both in action and in word?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll put it up here. What else?
I said humble.
Humble. Okay. Humility. That's up here. Good. What else? Okay. I agree on this list. All right, so that's kind of the idea of what we have. Now I want you to look at this list we have up here, and I know it's backwards for you at home, but the list up here, how many of these are character traits versus skills? So skills are things that you do, and character traits are part of who you are. Okay, so we just talked about certain things about what we like in our leaders. Being kind, that's a character trait. Being open is a character trait, although that can be learned as well. It could be a skill that you develop over time. Having a good sense of morals, that's definitely a character trait. Having humility, a character trait. Having empathy, character trait. Delegation, that's a skill, but it's a hard skill. It's a skill that's really tough to do, especially when you're a doer so much on your own. You know, how do I get going and running? I just want to make this happen. I'm better off doing it on my own because I know what I want, my own vision. A willingness to do the work, that's also a character trait. It's a willingness to do it. It's not something that you learn. And then finally, being respectful kind of goes as both. Really a character trait, but it's also something that you can learn as a skill over time, being respectful for others. But it starts as a character trait, as who you are. Here's what I want you to know. You don't need, I'll just sit down so you guys can see me. You don't need to have character to be a leader. It's not necessary. There are a lot of leaders out there who have a lot of skills, who have learned how to become good leaders. So you don't need to have character to be a good leader. But if you have character, you become a leader worth following. That's what you guys have all said, right? This is the character traits, or some of the character traits of the leaders that I love. I would love to follow them. It's because of the character that you have. Humility, integrity, accountability. We talked about courage, right? And that person of who I am, that's what makes you worth following. Otherwise, if you just have a lot of skills, you don't have a character, you're willing to compromise at the first chance you can for progress. Leaders want progress. We want to always continue to develop ourselves, other people around us, and then our company. We want to be better. And we're often willing to compromise our character based on our progress. And leaders with good character are willing to say no. I want to maintain the good character. It's okay if we take a financial hit to do so. I taught in Business 101, and some of you probably knew this already, one of the classes I've taught before, and if you haven't, maybe you've seen it elsewhere. There's something, move it right over here. This area here in the middle. This is my economic drivers. This is my social drivers. This is my environmental drivers. Right? Also known as people, place, or profit, and people, place, and profit. This is called the triple bottom line. This is how we develop. This is how we develop companies. This is how companies are measured. How good are you economically? How good are you socially? Helping people, helping the community, helping them not get COVID-19. Environmentally, helping the environment, whether it be the natural resources that we have, oil, soil, water, etc. And helping the environment not to pollute, but then also giving back to the environment. If you cut down a lot of trees, do you plant trees? And so a lot of that is to allow people for future generations to have resources, which is also called sustainability, which is the part in the middle of the three circles. So we have this concept called the triple bottom line, and character helps drive the sustainability. Character says, I'm willing to say no because I don't want to be morally bankrupt. I want to be able to help the environment. I want to be able to help other people. And people without character usually just focus on the top one, economic. I want the company to succeed. I want it to drive. I want it to continue. And so all of this together is this idea of character. Again, you don't have to have character to lead, but it makes you a leader worth following. So how do you get character? If it's not a skill, how do you get it?
I think it has to do with the way you're raised.
Okay, what do you mean, the way you're raised? How?
Like, you see your parents doing something, so you think that you should do that.
Okay,
Like, my mom is really kind, and so I feel like I portray that sometimes.
okay. So there's a lot of childhood upbringing with it. You kind of respect and you follow the will of your parents in that regard. Yeah, so there's part of that experience or that background. Anyone else?
I would agree, like, I know that my parents always tried to influence on like having kids that always did the right thing,
Okay.
even when no one was around.
Do you know what the right thing is?
I feel like that's again how you're raised, like you figure out like what the right thing is, maybe in your parents' eyes, what the right thing is.
Okay.
Maybe not all society agrees that like the right thing is
Okay.
the same, but and at least I always grew up knowing in my parents' eyes I'm doing the right thing.
Ask the average person whether or not Trump is doing a good job as president, and you'll get a whole bunch of different right things. So from your parents' perspective, doing the right thing and kind of listening to what they said, especially if they were good role models. If you don't have a good role model, even at work or even in school, then how do you do this? How do you know what the right thing is? How do you gain character? I mean, what is the right thing? What's the right thing in class? So as a student, what's the right thing to do in any class? Pay attention and participate. What else is the right thing to do? How does one get good grades in school? Study, do your work. Anything else? How do you know those are the right things? It's what society tells you. Okay, it's what the professor tells you. Okay, so we're doing the right thing, kind of getting the concept there. You're kind of, it's ingrained inside of you. It's what others tell you to do. It's what it's behaving. It's being obedient. It's obeying. It's trying to get that thought across that, okay, if I will get a good grade if I do the right things, right? So it's kind of a construct that's created in the classroom, in this microcosm that we have, right? Do your discussion forums on time. By the way, your initial post is due tonight, but do the discussion forums on time, take the quizzes, you'll get a good grade, right? So you kind of have that cycle that's there. In society, in a greater purpose, don't do things to hurt other people, right? That's kind of this idea of a moral concept. But then when it talks about things like politics or it comes down to wearing masks and what have you, it gets a lot harder, right? Because the right thing could be seen differently by different people. So for you to do the right thing helps you get your character. So where does that come from? How does one get character? You watch it. You see other people do it. You see something attractive about somebody else that they do something and you're like, oh, wow, I wish I could do that. And you kind of gain that idea and that perspective from the people. Your character is determined by your background, your upbringing, your faith, and also the 5 closest people to you. Sprint used to have this thing where you had a top 5 people in your phone, and these are the people you talk to the most, and that you didn't get charged at all for any of those phone calls. So it was your top 5. Well, in the same way, you have your top 5. Who are your top 5 people? You will behave similarly in a combination of what everybody does in that top 5 circle. And part of that is how you gain your character. So if you see something that somebody does that really wows you, it makes sense to befriend that person. You're like, wow, I like that. How did you do that? Where did that come from? What's your background? And you just kind of starting that conversation. You gain character. It's innate. It's inside of you. But a lot of it has to do with your background. And a lot of it is your own expectation. So how would you want to be treated? It's really nice when they say my pleasure at Chick-fil-A. Right? How many other people say my pleasure? Not many. So you kind of see this idea, like, I'm going to take that, I'm going to absorb it, I'm going to use it myself. And you grow character that way. And it's hard. Right? This is different than skills. This is different than vision. This is different than communication. This is even a little bit different than courage, although courage is also a character skill too. Right? You will become worth following once you have character. And the reason I didn't want to get into this is, well, one, we're going to get into this at the end of the semester again too. But second, it's really hard to understand what is good character. Right? It's really hard to just kind of, you can identify it, but then to explain why does somebody have good character, it's hard to do. Right? Where does that come from? Like I said, part of it could be faith, what you follow, what you believe. Right? I think a lot of people in the United States are Christian or Jewish. So there's this set of morals and rules and codes of how you should behave. Part of it is parents' upbringing. Saying please and thank you is a big deal. Right? My kids all say please and thank you because I made such a big deal to point it out to them that that's what you should do. And that's how you should behave. So all of that is kind of how we get this concept of character. Now, how do you start learning character? Well, start observing people. Remember, I think it was this class. Remember a while ago I said start by looking at the end. So when you die, which is not a pleasant thought, but when you die, what are people going to say about you at your funeral? Do they say, oh, wow, she had really, really expensive tastes. So expensive. She had amazing cars and she had a huge house. Is that what people will say to you at a funeral? No. What are they going to say? All the great things that you were, all the good character that you have. If you are shaking hands that are being your reception line of how you did X in life, what was that X? What are you known for? And really, it's tied into what are the character traits being known for. Let's say you were one of the best accountants in Indiana, right? Being a great accountant is not a bad thing, but it's really the character. This person never cut corners. This person always did the right thing. This person always helped out people who were in need. That's what they're going to say. So your character is all based and stemmed on that. So that kind of applies to your leadership. That kind of helps give that perspective and some dimensions there to your leadership, how you lead others, caring about other people, helping other people that are in need, having integrity, having honesty, having the courage to stand up for what's right. And that's hard to do. Most leaders will capitulate at the first sign of struggle because they have progress. They want to continue with their progress. They want to grow. They want to grow others. But having that, and you won't, if you do that, you will say no often. You want to maintain your integrity. You'll maintain your character, and you probably won't advance as fast as you would like. So it's this weird paradox. I want to grow, but at the same time, I want to have my courage, have my character. And to do so, I'm going to say no so I don't grow. But you have your integrity. So how do you mitigate that? So right now, think about it on your own. We're not going to get together in a discussion right now. How would you go about growing your character? What's one attribute of character that you really would like to change? What's something you see in somebody else and you're like, I really need to have that? And it's not organization or planning or leading in that regard, communicating, but what's something in you as a character, as a person, that you would like to grow? Do you have an idea? Okay. Now I'd like you to turn to your neighbor. I'm going to put you guys online back in a group again, okay? And I want you to discuss what's one thing that you would like to do to grow as a character, in character. What's something about you that you would like to discuss, that you're okay, willing to discuss, and saying, hey, here's what I'd like to grow in this area. Okay, I'll give you 3 minutes. I was told that redheads have the worst temper.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not, we got two or three of us on my team, and I'm not the worst one on the team, so that's all I pride myself on. I'm not the worst one of the redheads, so,
I'm not the worst. Makes me good.
well, maybe better.
I could probably be more open-minded and like set in my own decisions.
I'm pretty terrible at delegating. And that's a skill, but still, I'm terrible at thinking other people can't do things as well as I do.
I think that's pretty normal.
Hmm.
Like group projects, I'm like, I'll just do it. Like, I don't know, bother.
My problem is less thinking that they can't do it as well as I can. It's more of like I don't want to have the burden be with it.
Yeah. I don't want to burden you with this. Yeah. I wear a mask for you, not for me. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna get them out of the breakout room. Okay, last thing I want you to do is I want you to take your idea and I want you to write it down somewhere. What are you gonna work on? What's your thing? Even if you didn't share it, what's your thing? What are you gonna work on? What's your one attribute of character? Now, here's the interesting thing of character. Your skills you train for and you end up developing and you end up being good or mediocre or bad at them, okay? But you train for it. Your character, how are you tested on your character? It's a pop quiz. You can't study for it. It just is what it is. You're in a situation. How often have you been in a situation and thought later that day, you know, I could have handled that differently. I could have done something different with that. Or, you know, I was walking past and so there was a person on the a side road who was homeless. And I didn't even look at him. I didn't even respect him. Didn't even think of that. I could have done that differently. Could have been much better. And my character would have been different in that regard, but I didn't. But it's good to know for next time. I'm in another situation. But your character is always a pop quiz. We never know when our character will be tested. But how influential it is with our leadership. So again, you don't have to have character, but you become a leader worth following when you do have character. And that character is what really develops us and what really helps us to grow. So what are some elements of character? We'll have some on the board. Being kind to other people, having good morals, being open. There's a theory, and we learned 220 called authentic leadership. And authentic leadership is this idea of you being you. Be the real you. Don't be somebody else. Just be you and grow as you. So you become you, right? So you are transparent. And there's an aspect of that called relational transparency. I'm just going to tell you who I am. This is what I do. This is how I think. I had another leader that I talked with. He said, I used to think in terms of whiteboards. So I have this whiteboard in my head, and I've got this whiteboard in my head, and this whiteboard in my head. And if you could explain things to him in terms of something you would have diagrammed on a whiteboard, it made a lot more sense to him because he was a visual learner. Right? So it was very unique in that regard, but that was relational transparency. He just told you, this is how I think. This is how I work. Here's another one for me. I always have a song in my head. Right now I have Maroon 5 stuck in my head. Right? So I'm hearing the song in my head over and over while I'm talking, and I always just have a song in my head. And my daughter is the same as me. She always has a song in her head, but she's willing to hum it and sing it out. So sometimes when she's just sitting on her own, she'll just start singing. Like, where is that coming from? Because she always has a song in her head. Right? So that's kind of just the way that it works in her. And it kind of works in both of our lives. And I've just kind of come to acknowledge that. But that's that relational transparency. Part of that is also another characteristic called balanced processing, which is I'm going to listen to what each person's going to say. And that's a skill, right? Listening is a skill. But I'm going to learn what people say, but there's a willingness to do so. There's a willingness to say, I want to hear what you have to say. I'm going to pay attention to you and listen to exactly what you have in mind. And even though it may seem intimidating, even though it may seem like, oh, I've got to talk with everybody again, there's that willingness to do so. I want to understand as your leader what everyone else has in mind. What do you think is the best way to handle the mask policy at Franklin College? And then asking each individual, and some people can pass and they don't want to talk, but asking each individual, what do you think? And that balanced processing is taking into consideration everyone else's perspective before making a decision on their own. But there's a willingness for that, there's a learning. And that's hard because a lot of people don't do that. They just say, here's what we're going to do. This makes sense to me. Everybody else should do it. And back to our first day of class, not everybody leads the same way. So if people all lead differently, people will follow differently. There'll be different triggers that get people's attention. And so with that is this idea of character. I want to follow somebody of good character. Now, can you be that person of good character? What's that like? What's that look like? What's that sound like? Like, what good character traits do you have now? Do you follow some of these that you admire and respect? How many of you have a good moral compass? That's a hard concept, right? Doing the right thing all the time. How many of you have given up swearing and so you don't swear? Can you imagine leaders that swear all the time? Are you willing to follow that? Are you willing to be that person? That's hard to do for some people, right? In my house, if my kids say, shut up, that's a swear term. Can you imagine? Right? That's a very different perspective. But then as they get older, that probably won't be an issue anymore. Right? We're being respectful of each person. Are you respectful of everybody? Are you respectful of people that have different opinions than you? Racism or sexism? Are you respectful of their opinions? Are you respectful of them? There's a difference. No, I hate your opinion, but I still respect you as a human being. That's hard, especially when they're so different, especially as we go into a political season in the next month. Like I said, ask anyone if the president is doing a good job. That's a really hard question, right? Everybody has such strong opinions. And so having that character lets you develop that. Here's another one. Willingness to work, a willingness to do the work. I'm asking you to take the trash out. Although, you know what, if your hands are full, I'll take the trash out. Even though everybody loves taking trash outside. Nobody likes taking trash outside, right? So there's that character, that willingness to do the job. You know what, I'll do the accounting for the company. I hate doing it, but I'll do it if I have to. Right? There's that character and that willingness to do it, as opposed to, oh, this is your job, I'm not going to take care of it. Like, that's yours. It's hard. Again, really tough. Being kind to everybody. Here's what I'm learning in my life right now. Being from New Jersey, not being sarcastic in responses. That's tough. How often have you seen something or seen someone else do something and you're like, oh, whatever, and being sarcastic? How many of you are good drivers? Respectful drivers, right? Waiting at roundabouts for people. Now we have a roundabout in Franklin by the hospital, right? Or how many of you are, you know what, respectful, it's okay. It's all right. I don't understand why the roads are still closed on South Street. But you know what, they must be doing something. I get it. It's okay. Maybe they're working on something, there's a bigger problem than we expected, etc. It's hard to have that character. How many of you are patient? Like willing to wait, willing to train, willing to help other people grow. It's hard to be patient, especially when you feel like, oh my goodness, just let me do it. I can do it a lot easier. Right? Oh no, I want to train you. I want to help you get this done. I can tell you as a man who's had 4 2-year-olds at some point in life, right? Having various 2-year-olds, your patience is tested all the time, right? And okay, you're going to do it. Okay, we're going to do this. Okay, that's all right. We're going to make messes. That's okay. We'll make messes and then we'll clean them up. And I'll teach you how to clean them up, etc. It's hard to have patience. or to have patience with other drivers, to have patience with other students on campus. So character is critically important. Out of all the 5 C's we've dealt with, this is probably the most important. Because as I said, it makes you a leader worth following. So with the, what is the one area of character that you want to develop? Another question is, what is your temptation? Where do you typically cut corners on character? Where do you typically say, you know what? It's okay. No one else is going to know. No one else is going to notice. It's all right. Right? And why is that an issue? Because if you know where your temptations are to cut character, they don't become bigger things later in life. So like these scandals you have of people having, I don't know, extramarital affairs or having a drinking problem or having a problem with embezzlement and gambling or whatever, right? These scandals that come out later started with these small temptations because they cut corners on character. And now it becomes a big deal later in life. So I'll stop there for today. I mean, I'll let you guys out a little bit early, but the reality is character is huge. Okay, and again, we'll talk about character, humility, and integrity, and courage later in the semester again, right before we finish out. But I just want you to know that this is a really big one. So I'll even go as far as to say, expect to have this as one of your essay questions on your exam. Okay. You still have a discussion forum post to do tonight, if you haven't done it already. Your 2 response posts are due on Friday. We will not meet in person. We'll meet on Zoom on Friday. And we will have your quiz on Friday. That'll be due on Sunday. Any questions? Any other thoughts? All right, you're free to go. Everybody, thanks for joining me online today. Any questions online? If not, then I will see you guys later. I'm stopping the recording.